Hi everyone, welcome back to another session by K21Academy, and today our expert trainer will be discussing about AWS CDK, that is Cloud Development Kit. So watch the video till the end.
So AWS CDK, it's a AWS Cloud Development Kit, right? So this is a service. Generally, if I want to explain you what is CDK all about. Now, as you all know, everybody are aware of the CloudFormation and Terraform, right? What are they? They are infrastructure as a code. And to provision and manage the infrastructure, we're going to use a JSON or a YAML code. And from that code, what we're going to do? We're going to create an infrastructure. Now, what is happening here? So now normally we'll have our programmers, the developers, they will be proficient with a programming language like Python, Node.js, and so on. And they create an application in the particular programming language. And now in order to do an infrastructure automation, right, they will have to have a separate knowledge on the JSON or a YAML where they need to start, learning and, exploring about that. And they write a separate code for the infrastructure, right? The same applies for the DevOps team as well. They need to have a knowledge of both programming language and the infrastructure as a code language as well. Now, in order to solve that is where CDK come into picture. In the CDK, you don't have to use an infrastructure code that is JSON or an YAML. You can use your programming language to automate your infrastructure provision, right? You can write a programming language. So there are separate syntax and certain programming language supports it. You can write a programming language. What the CDK does, the CDK is going to use a particular programming language, convert it to an equivalent JSON or a YAML, and then execute that and provision the infrastructure, right? So this is just a basic level for you to understand what it does. Let's go ahead and see what are the features, what it is having. So as you can see, it lets you to build reliable, scalable, cost-effective applications in the cloud with a considerable expressive power of a programming language. As I said, you can create the entire thing. You don't have to, let's say that, okay, for programming, I have to use one particular programming language, and for the for the infrastructure, I have to use a separate language, right? So that is not needed. So what will happen? You will be able to use the same programming language with an expressive power of a programming language. You will be able to build a reliable, scalable, and cost-effective application in AWS, right? So AWS Cloud Development Kit accelerates the cloud development using a common programming language to model your application. So when you're modeling your application, here the infrastructure part also is included, right? It will help you to use those programming language by you, and the AWS CDK supports these programming language. If you are writing any program, and if your team is proficient with the programming language, any of these programming language like TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, Java, .NET, and Golang. So in that case, you can use and leverage these programming language to do an infrastructure automation, infrastructure provision as well, right? You can also use a pre-configured application components from the packet manager. Model your application logic and an infrastructure in a programming language. This is what is important. So in your programming language itself, you're going to model your application. Application code is any which way is there. In addition to the programming language, you can go ahead and configure your infrastructure as well. So provision your application with AWS CloudFormation. What it does, so your application will also be deployed. Along with that, the infrastructure will also be deployed. You will be able to provision your application with the AWS CloudFormation. You can provision your application code and supporting infrastructure with the AWS CloudFormation, right? So what you have written, you have modeled your application by using a programming language. In the back end, AWS is going to use the AWS service and CloudFormation to provision the infrastructure and deploy your application into that. This approach, right, using a programming language and modeling both infrastructure and application yields many benefits, including you'll be able to build the high-level constructs that automatically provide sensible, secure default for your AWS resource, defining more infrastructure with less code, right? So you can use the programming idioms like parameters, conditions, loop, composition, inheritance to model your system design from building block provided by AWS and others, right? Now, as you all know, every programming language, they're famous for their own programming idioms, right? How you can effectively manage your application in that particular programming language, right? In this case, you can use them as well for your infrastructure provisioning. So you should be able to use the conditionals, parameters, loops, composition, inheritance to model your system design from building blocks provided by AWS and others, right? You will be able to provide a building blocks provided by AWS and others. From that, you will be able to use those application ETMs in your infrastructure provisioning as well. So put your infrastructure, application code, and configuration in all one place. So previously, You'll have to have an application code separately. You'll have to have an infrastructure code. So, and then you'll have to separately deploy them. You'll have to deploy the infrastructure first, and then you deploy your application to it. Right here, by using a CDK, what you can do is you can keep your application code and configuration and infrastructure all in one place, ensuring that at every milestone you have you will have a complete cloud deployable system. So you can employ your software engineering practices such as code reviews. Right now, using a programming language, you get a lot of benefits. Right, so in the programming language, you can do a code review, you can do a test, you can do a source control to make your infrastructure more robust. Right, like the way so infrastructure as a code makes to an extent a more programmatic approach. But if you directly use a programming language, it will help you to use a programming best engineering practices. Like you will be able to use such as code reviews, unit tests, source control to make your infrastructure more robust, right? So connect your AWS resources together and grant permission using a simple intent-oriented APIs, right? So you will be able to connect your AWS resources together and grant a permission for the particular intent. So import an existing AWS CloudFormation template to queue your resource as CDK API, right? It will help you to import your existing AWS CloudFormation template to queue your resource as CDK API. So use the power of AWS CloudFormation to perform infrastructure deployment predictably and repeatedly with the rollback on error, right? So AWS CDK is going to, under the hood, is use the CloudFormation. So it's going to use the CloudFormation to perform infrastructure deployment predictably and repeatedly with the rollback on error, right? That's the CloudFormation output, whether the pipeline has created and what output it has to provide. Now, in this case, what will happen is if you also notice, we have just the 61 lines of code for creating a pipeline with a code build and code commit as a source, and having all those configuration and saying that code commit is going to build it from a Docker image. The same thing, if you want to achieve in the CloudFormation, you will have to write at least 500 lines of code or at least 600 lines of code, right? But this is, as you can see, it is a less of a code and more of an infrastructure. Clear? I might not go in the detail of the examples, but you will be in the project work, but you will be able to see in our project also we'll be using a CDK to deploy the infrastructure, right? So let me go to the console and you can search for CDK. So you will get something called, so you'll have to use that particular development key. So this is not a service actually. You'll have it's like a kit where you'll have to install it and you'll have to use this.
So guys, this was our expert from team K21Academy. And if in case you missed upon any concept and if you want to dive deeper to any concept, then we have something really special for you. We have our free class on AWS DevOps for Beginners certification along with some demo. In this free class, you'll be learning about why learn DevOps and on AWS Cloud, what is AWS DevOps, who should be learning about it, CI/CD pipelines. You'll be getting a demo. You'll also be getting some hands-on labs and job opportunities as well. So, in order to register for this free class, all you have to do is just log on to k21academy.com/AWS DevOps 02. And after that, you'll be seeing this kind of interface. You just have to click on book your free seat now and add your event date according to your availability, enter your name, your email address, your phone number, and click on yes, save my seat. Moving ahead, you'll be seeing this kind of URL on the extreme right.